So today we're going to be talking about Paige Bueckers, and Paige Bueckers is somebody that has basically been given the reins amongst the W players as the future, but she's also not even in the WNBA. I think in general, most of the time, what people are saying that like what Caitlin Clark is, I think a lot of WNBA players believe it should be Paige Bueckers, and I think there is a reason for that, and I think All-Star Break is a it changed it. It did really change this. And we're gonna have to start all this with Paige Bueckers in high school. Where look, in high school, Paige Bueckers was better than Caitlin Clark. She just was. Like, they played together on Team USA teams. Paige was MVP. Caitlin Clark was a bench player in a lot of them. Paige was better than Clark. Before we get on to it, if you guys aren't new to the channel, subscribe. We're trying to hit 26,500. I don't know, like, I'm probably uploading this Sunday. I don't know when, what the story is. But there's literally a mixtape titled Number One Player for a Reason. And what Paige did in high school was stuff we had never seen before in the women's side. Like, what Paige could do is, like, she had more to her game than Caitlin Clark. Like you're looking at these clips. Like, just the way that she played ball was like nothing we had ever seen before. Like, as far as a guard is concerned. Like, she had this level of flair that Caitlin Clark has to an extent now. But, like, she had a tighter handle. She could pull from mid. She was making a fool of her competition in high school. And she was the player that Gino Auriemma wanted. And look, if you are UConn, in hindsight, it's incredibly dumb not to take both of them, because Caitlin Clark really wanted to go to UConn. But at the time, Gino Auriemma made what was probably a right decision. And Paige Bueckers, in college, as a freshman, won National Player of the Year. And we kind of forget, because of how good Caitlin Clark has been, just how good Paige Bueckers was. And I still think last year, Paige Bueckers was real good. Like, Paige Bueckers came out, averaged 21.9, 5 boards, got them to a Final Four, and was also a really good defender on ridiculous efficiency, by the way. 53% from the field, over 40% from three. But I watched enough of her play last year that I was like, Paige Bueckers lost a little bit of what Caitlin Clark didn't. And I think that's the reason why the general public, especially as the years went on, were more so gravitate towards Clark. And I think it's a big reason why the players more so gravitate towards Paige. Because one, Paige is in UConn. These UConn players stick together. So a lot of the UConn players would have been hyping up Paige. The former UConn players that would have known her, being like, yeah, she's great. And then it's only really, you've seen it at All-Star Weekend, that these players are kind of hyping up Caitlin Clark, haven't spent time around her. I wouldn't be surprised if Aaliyah Boston is a big reason for, like, the change in her perception around the league. But it is it is just a fact that in the WNBA, it's very cliquey. Like, there are cliques everywhere, and obviously if you go to Blue Blood, the players that were on the team with you, or not even on the team with you, that went to the same college, are obviously going to have a bit more of a relationship with you than they otherwise would have. But, yeah, so I think when it comes to the public, we can't forget, Caitlin Clark averaged 26 points as a freshman. That was one of the most hyped games of the lockdown years. One of the most hyped college games ever was the freshman Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bueckers. And at that time, Paige Bueckers had the advantage. Paige was seen as the better player. UConn were the better team, as well as Iowa put it up to them. It was a close game. UConn just had better players. They just had the better players. They had the better team. And I think as far as like output goes, Caitlin Clark was more suited to her team. But at that stage, Paige Bueckers was seen as the better player, because what she did at UConn was seen as more impressive than what Caitlin Clark was doing at Iowa. But the more I'm watching Paige, it seems like if you watch what Paige Bueckers was doing in high school, that player, if that player still exists, she instantly becomes one of the biggest names in the WNBA on the spot. If that player still exists, I just don't know if it does. If UConn, if Gino Auriemma has taught her to play the WNBA style. And I think that might get her the efficiency that she showed in her last year in college. I think she showed really good efficiency. She shot the ball really well. She played defense. She was an unbelievable team player. And I think like that's a lot of the reason why these players are saying they would take her over Caitlin, is because she does a lot of the little things better. And like there's doing a lot of little things, and then there is having that little bit extra. And look, there's a difference between if Steph Curry was just this spot-up shooter, did everything right, he would be a great player. He would have been a great player. Would have been the greatest spot-up shooter of all time. But Steph Curry's there hitting crazy shots. He's shimmying on people. He is what people want to watch. And Paige Bueckers was somebody that fans really wanted to watch. If you don't remember, 3 years ago, there were talks about allowing freshmen and not making players do 4 years of college. The reason for that wasn't Caitlin Clark should be drafted. The reason was her. And I think that the rise of Caitlin Clark, as well as obviously one, Paige Bueckers getting hurt, and two, Paige Bueckers' game no longer having as much freedom in her own game as she had in high school, had led to the big gap in the popularity amongst the general public of Caitlin Clark being way over Paige Bueckers. But these WNBA players who liked Paige, who really liked Paige Bueckers, the person, who really liked the way Paige plays, who liked the fact she went to UConn, who liked the fact that she basically bought into the UConn system, are always going to promote Paige. They always are. This league is ran by UConn and South Carolina. This league is ran by, at this stage, by those teams. It is. If you went to one of those colleges, like if you look at Team USA, other than players, it is basically some UConn players, some South Carolina players, and players that are friends with them. That's it. It is just players that are friends with the UConn players. And her going to UConn is why the WNBA players are going to want to push her. The WNBA are going to try, and it's not going to work. That being said, if high school Paige Bueckers comes back, if high school Paige comes back and she's there basically just playing with a level of flair that we haven't seen from any other than Caitlin Clark, yeah, Paige is going to be huge. Paige is going to be a highlight machine in the WNBA. If the Paige Bueckers that has been playing the last couple of years comes back, she's going to be one of the best players in the WNBA. But there's a difference between being a real good player and a transcendent player, as far as not basketball ability goes, as far as just what people perceive you as and what people perceive you as in the grand scheme of things. If you are a top tier player and your box office, you're going to be a lot more relevant than a player who is a top tier player and is not box office. For example, AJ Wilson's not box office. She is the best player in the world by so much. She is not box office. Paige Bueckers could be box office. Caitlin Clark is box office. So, and I'm looking at some other players. I think Arike, and then the problem is Arike's box office, but I don't think Arike's good enough. I don't think she's good enough. Maureen Johannes is box office. There are players that are box office, Jewel Lloyd at times, that are just not good enough. Maybe Kennedy Carter is at that level, but she's just not. It's everything, but it's the thing between her ears that's stopping her. But for Paige Bueckers to really take over, I really do think she's got to bring some of that high school flair back. But the problem is that bringing that back is not the UConn way. It's not the UConn way. And in hindsight, being 2020, the best contribution that Gino Auriemma ever actually made for women's basketball was not recruiting Caitlin Clark, letting Caitlin Clark go to a school that let her play her game and her revolutionizing the game of basketball. Instead of bringing in Caitlin Clark with Paige Bueckers, turning Caitlin Clark into a wide open spot-up shooter, and the WNBA is nowhere close to where it is right now.